G'day everyone, it's Chris here from Severe Weather Chasers. We have done an update, but it got lost, it got damaged, so this one will be very brief. This is the area to watch, the Mornington Island radar. Over the next 24 to 48 hours, we see big increases in thunderstorm activity, and we see that thunderstorm activity pushing to the north, but from the north we've got other thunderstorm activity pushing towards the south. Should be a good convergence zone developing in here in the next 24 hours. A bit closer to home, we have excellent shower activity developing on a very moist northeast stream coming in off the ocean and pushing towards the southwest. We've got good thunderstorm activity out west as well. We're going to see falls here of 20 to 50 millimeters in the Townsville area by 9 a.m. Latest infrared imagery shows us the tropical cyclone Iggy out here pushing towards the southwest. Got a nice eye to it now. It is a category 2. It has intensified a fair bit overnight. We see over the local area though, we see a very deep and good looking monsoon trough as well as an inland trough developing through Queensland. These two features and their interactions will create massive rainfalls over Queensland in the next 2 to 4 days, and also spawn a low pressure system just near Cairns or Cooktown. We can see over northern parts of the states we've had moderate to heavy falls in the North Tropical Coast and Tablelands over the wet tropics coast. We've also had some decent thunderstorm activity inland, and we've also had some good shower and storm activity near Townsville and also in the northern Goldfields, Upper Flinders. We've also had moderate to heavy falls all through the Northern Cape in a very, very strong northwesterly airstream. Alright, 4 a.m. to 4 p.m. today, it's all happening. Very deep inland trough, massive rainfalls over inland Queensland, massive rainfalls over the Gulf country, moderate to heavy rain everywhere, everywhere north of a line, probably Mackay northwards. We're looking at moderate to heavy rain on the Herbert Lower Burdekin on the North Tropical Coast. We're looking at extremely heavy falls here over the Gulf country, 1 to 300 millimeters in the next 8 hours now. 4 p.m. to 4 a.m. today, we've got some really intense thunderstorm activity here along the trough line. 1 to 300 millimeters expected, with 25 to 50 mils all through this region. We've also got moderate to heavy falls again on the coastline, 25 to 50 right near Townsville if you want to put a number to it. We've got also a little bit of a clearance here over the central coast with Sundays as a ridge temporarily builds in the area, but don't worry, that's only a short-lived feature. And we've got moderate to heavy rain here again as a little low develops just in where my cursor is right now. The trough over the inland parts of Queensland and the monsoon trough combine here to produce big rains and a very warm, moist tongue of air pushing all the way into towards the southeast. And so we've got only light to moderate falls on the coast tomorrow morning, but we've got some very heavy thunderstorm activity tomorrow night. Tonight and tomorrow morning, because this is 4 p.m. to 4 a.m. tomorrow. And so we've got, most of the activity is definitely in this region here. 4 p.m. to 4 a.m. tomorrow and into Thursday, we have this inland trough creating massive falls once again, 50 to 100 mils, 25 to 50 mils, fairly regular falls right along that trough line. We have a low here that's pushing inland now into the peninsula, and we've got light to moderate falls pretty well all through the coastline. So very active weather pattern over the next 48 hours. It needs to be watched for some very heavy rainfall, particularly inland. I'm not going to delve past that because there is some uncertainty in the forecast afterwards. The more certain part of it is that a low will develop here and then push eastwards. Whether it develops into a tropical cyclone straight away or whether it takes ages to do that is a little up in the air, because if it does develop into a cyclone straight away, all this rain gone. But if it takes a little longer to develop, it will continue to maintain rain areas, showers, storms all through far northern Queensland if it remains a monsoon low just off the coast. So there is a little bit of uncertainty in that forecast. I'll show you what some of the models are thinking. The BOMS global model, not the most accurate thing, but it needs to be paid attention to when we're doing a model analysis. So there it is right now at 10 p.m. last night. And there it is at 10 p.m. tonight. We can see that this model's already initialized the low, pushed it onto basically the eastern half of the Cape. So we've got a fairly strong high coming through here, pushing a ridge up the coast. So that at least is the same as the EC model. We're looking at a ridge pushing up the coast, clearing a bit of activity from the central coast, and pushing a nice feed of moisture into this inland trough, so big rainfalls again. So there's something that they do have in common at 24 hours. And then at 48 hours we see the slow developing off Princess Charlotte Bay, and a deep inland trough still here, creating those falls of 100 plus millimeters. So we're getting some very good, well at this stage, some very good model convergence on this area, suggesting some very heavy rainfalls along this trough line and also near that low. The GFS model so it shows a deep inland trough in through here. We see some ridging pushing up the coast. We've got another new high coming in. That was last night. Tonight she's all happening. We've got deep inland trough, big rainfalls here over southern inland or even central inland Queensland. We've got this low developing on the Western Cape. We've got light to moderate falls on the coast, moderate to heavy, possibly very heavy falls inland, and we've got a couple of cyclones out here, or one cyclone and one low that we need to watch. Pushing into 48 hours, this model has a tropical cyclone or very, very strong monsoon low developing just on the Western Cape, just to the around about Kawanyama, and we have still a very strong trough system in through here with moderate to heavy falls inland, still light to moderate falls, possibly moderate to heavy on the coast in the Herbert Burdekin. So that's the next 48 hours by the GFS. The Canadian CMC model tends to go a little stir crazy when it gets a hint of a cyclone, so don't pay too much attention to intensities and how many it develops. Sometimes it can develop up to 5 in the Australian region at any one time, so it does get a little silly when it comes to cyclones, but it can show this inland trough really well and show us what's happening there. So deep inland trough, just like every other model, nice big high pushing into the bite. Tonight we've got this trough system, heaps of rain. This low is much more broad on the CMC, and so creating broad areas of moderate to heavy rainfall, basically anywhere from about Bowen northwards or even the Whitsundays northwards, and also over inland Queensland. At 48 hours we see already this wants to spin up the low well to the east of Cooktown and continues to keep the trough inland here, creating moderate to heavy rainfall again. And so if this scenario happens, the Herbert Lower Burdekin Central Coast Whitsundays Central Coast will basically miss out on pretty much any rain after tomorrow. We don't expect this scenario. It seems to be a little too aggressive. Being a tropical system, it would be remiss of us not to actually look at the tropical model, and the tropical model has this deep inland trough. Look at this, under 1,000 hectopascals at this little low pressure at the surface. So that's at 10 p.m. last night. At 10 p.m. tonight, once again we're looking at 100 plus millimeters of rain. This is amazing rainfall in here. So if you are in here and your rivers are already on the rise, you need to be very, very careful over the next 24 to 48 hours. Things look like really happening for you. We've got just a broad area of low here, and that makes it really good as this ridge pushes up. Big rainfalls. It's almost got about 80 to 100 millimeters smack bang over the top of Townsville. So we're looking at a very active situation if this occurs both inland and on the Herbert Burdekin coastline, and even as far south as the Whitsundays, pushing up into the North Tropical Coast, obviously, which is where this low will eventually push offshore from. Now at 48 hours, a little like the CMC, it's pretty aggressive. So by Wednesday night, it has this low developing east of Cairns. That will make the flow more easterly down here. As ridging pushes up the coast, we see less rain over the Central Coast and the Herbert Burdekin, and we see rainfall start to centralise around the North Tropical Coast and the peninsula. And we also see big rain once again. I can't stress this enough, people. If you live in inland Queensland, you need to really pay attention to this situation. That's 100 plus millimeters, 100 to 200 millimeters, and it's also getting support from the European model for about 1 to 300 millimeters in this area. So you need to be very careful, because the European is usually quite conservative in its rainfall estimates. So if it's predicting 1 to 300 millimeters, you might be in a bit of strife over the next couple of days. So we've got this low here near Cairns or Cooktown, and we've got heavy rainfall, particularly to its north, because remember it's more of a monsoonal low at this stage, and so it's going to get a very deep feed of northwesterly moisture from the north rather than from the south. So still looking at moderate to heavy falls, but the really heavy stuff just to the north of the low. The good thing is that by 72 hours, while the low deepens and becomes about 995 hectopascals, so could even be a cyclone at that stage, but that depends on its wind structure. It still remains reasonably close to the coast, and it still remains reasonably broad, and that still pushes a nice feed of moisture into the central coast with Sundays, even the Herbert Burdekin and the North Tropical Coast. So we're still getting fairly heavy rainfall. This really heavy rain from central inland Queensland is now pushed towards southern inland Queensland, which is probably great news for them, because I don't think they want it a third day in a row of plus 100 mils, and we see some very heavy rain just on the edge of this boundary between warm moist air and cooler dry air. So look, it's a very active weather situation. You do need to keep an eye on it. It will create massive rainfalls inland. It will create heavy rainfalls on the coast. It's just something that we do need to monitor. We will release another update tonight at sometime between 6 and 7, because it is a situation that needs constant monitoring. As I say, it really does depend how quickly this low spins up. If it does what CMC suggests and spins up and pushes east really fast and develops into a big cyclone out here, that means no more rain for Queensland. However, the fact that there's an inland trough in here brings in northerly air into it and will create rainfall regardless for inland parts of Queensland, and possibly some extremely heavy falls. So hopefully the European, for once, is overestimating rainfall, because you don't need 1 to 300 mils in there. You only need 50 to 100. I'm sure you'd be happy with, but yeah, not the sort of scenario that some of these models are predicting, which is, plus 300 millimeters in parts over the next 48 to 72 hours. That's really not a situation we need. Thanks very much for watching. I'll talk to you again this evening.